Welcome back. Well, New Zealand First has also promised an overhaul of the electricity system. It's promising to buy back shares in Mighty River Power and combine the company with Genesis and Meridian to create a single generator. And its leader, Winston says it will look at capping any future price increases to the Consumer Price Index. Mr Peters is with me in the studio. Mr Peters, welcome to the program. Thank you for coming in this morning. So if Mighty River Power is sold, you say you'll buy the shares back. So it's valued at around $1.5 billion. Where will you get that money from?
There are all sorts of avenues for that. You've got the ability to access the Cullen fund. You've got the ability to access Kiwisaver in the short term. You've also got the ability to internationally access the market and borrow, which, as you know, according to Treasury, because of this is a high yielding asset, it makes economic sense to do that.
I don't think you'll be able to use Kiwisaver funds to access.
No, but if you change the investment rules, you can quite easily do that in the short term so that Kiwisaver is advantaged, whilst you over time recompense a Kiwisaver and the Cullen fund with respect to this asset. But what you've got to do is take control of the generating capacity where all this started. I can recall the National Party saying in '98 that they were going to plateau price movements. Well, their plateau ended looking like this, straight up and down, and that's where prices have gone, and it's been a massive price gouging exercise against New Zealand businesses and New Zealand homes.
Why aren't you supporting the Labour Greens plan?
Because our plan was announced a long time ago with respect to buying back Mighty River Power. The market needs to know that this country will not be sold down the drain by temporarily empowered politicians. The market needs to know. Anyone advising them on the investment capacity should be telling them about the political environment. This government, because of the United Party saying that water was special, has not got a mandate. Every poll says they haven't got a mandate. They've got a referendum coming. They could wait and find what the public thinks. So in short, the market needs to be properly briefed on all aspects, including what the political environment is.
What specifically don't you agree with in the current electricity policy?
What I don't agree with? Well, the so-called market model is a fiction. That's number one. Second, you've got secret taxation because the government is gouging the profits from this into its own coffers, and it's doing it by stealth. When you buy alcohol or food or cigarettes, you know what the tax is. In this case, you don't know what the tax is, but the government is taking billions over the years, and it's advantaging its own coffers while saying, we can't interfere because this is a market model.
You mentioned before the reforms of '98
yes.
under Max Bradford. New Zealand First, though, did support
on one condition. He guaranteed to introduce a regulatory regime to ensure that prices were what they promised. That is, price increase would be plateaued. They didn't plateau. He didn't use the regulatory regime, and nor was any other future government, because it advantages them to get these monies into the coffers by way of stealth.
Peter Brown, I think, stood shoulder to shoulder with Max Bradford. I don't recall him mentioning that. This was something that New Zealand First...
I do, because I sent him over to make sure that that was arranged.
So you oppose a deregulated market?
Well, you know, I oppose a market that doesn't operate like a market. This is, just like telecoms was for 20 years, a monopoly, a cartel, and all the profits prove it.
In a nutshell, then, tell me what New Zealand First would do. Well,
we're going to go where it matters, and that's the generating capacity, merge those three together, buy back Mighty River, merge the other two with them, and deliver cheap power as our grandfathers designed to do decades and decades ago. What you've got in this country is far too many businesses, instead of doing their own business, want to get their hands on the taxpayers' business.
OK. What about Contact Energy? They own some big stations. Well,
the Contact Energy shares at a certain time under the regime that I'm envisaging will one day come back to New Zealand, yes.
I want to just come back to this issue with the Labour and Greens policy.
I just might add, who was the worst performer in all these generating companies after the Bradford change and the sale in 1 October '98 of Contact Energy? Well, the so-called market model was the worst performer by miles.
So what would you do, nationalise Contact?
Oh, I see, we're going to call it nationalisation, are we?
Possibly.
And the fact is, if you take the taxpayers' assets, which is a form of communism, actually, then we've got every right to say, no, we want them back. That's not nationalisation. That's just plain good economic sense.
All right, you are in opposition. You haven't supported Labour and the Greens on their policy or found some kind of common ground.
We are not bound like the rest of the parties with some other party. Every other party is hugging one group or another group. New Zealand First, as you well know, is an independent party and thinks its own policies out.
And you jump a little bit between everybody. So what do we read into the fact that you're not supporting Labour or the Greens on this? What can we conclude from that?
Well, we think that our policy goes exactly to the nub of the problem, generation. And we believe that if I was to ask New Zealanders out there today, do you want to control your generation and own it like your grandfathers envisaged when we made all that investment and became the 6th most energy developed nation in the world? 8 out of 10 people would say yes. So that's why we're going with there.
Where is that statistic coming from?
Well, it's coming from my contact with the people of this country, and I had a meeting in Levin yesterday. I might say it was packed out wall to wall. No journalists there. No, don't laugh. Go on the website, you'll see it. Wall to wall, and they all were adamant that they want
This was the senior citizens
back.
meeting, wasn't it?
No, it was a huge public meeting.
Great
a lot of young people there.
OK, well, we'll take your word for it.
They're the ones standing up.
I want to come back to this issue with...
So you cover telephone booth audiences when people have got no market demand for what they're saying. We pack the whole hall, you're not there. All
right, well, give us a call next time, Mr Peters, and we'll send a camera along.
I called you in advance, you never turned up.
All right, let's take it back to that electricity situation. A difference on policy, though, as big as what Labour and the Greens are announcing, suggests you might not be able to support them in the forming of a government.
I've no doubt that the mass majority of Greens and Labour supporters want what I'm advocating, the re-ownership of something their grandfathers, their forefathers and they themselves paid for and built in the national interest and for their children. That's where the majority lies, and that's what we should be responding to. All
right, you're also supporting the government. So while you're not supporting Labour and the Greens, you're supporting the government on this issue of the GCSB legislation. Why are you doing that?
Look, I've been privileged to be very close up to security issues, both here and internationally, as a former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and worked closely with the GCSB. They've gone off the rails of late, that's a fact. But if you look at the domestic terrorism of the UK, the USA, even in Australia, and even parts, and sometimes in our past in terms of concerns, you would not do nothing about it.
I don't think it's about doing nothing about it.
For those who advocate, but people have written to me and said, why are you doing this? And I've written back to them and said, well, one day when there's bloodshed and mayhem at some train station, you'll be saying we did nothing. And I think if you know what is going on in the world, we need the GCSB as part of the security of this country, but we need them to be under control.
Well, I don't think the issue is about whether or not we need the GCSB. I think that's quite obvious that we do. I think the issue is that this is an agency that's been appallingly incompetent at times and has, without question, acted illegally. The government now wants to give them more powers. How does that make sense?
Well, it makes this sense. If the GCSB cannot have any surveillance on New Zealand residents, and new residents at that, or people who have terrorist bent or wish to work with terrorist organisations abroad, if the argument is they cannot do any investigation of these people, then I think you imperil the safety of many people in this country. I think it is that's serious, and that's why I want them to have those powers in a very limited way, but with a serious independent oversight by 3 people that the public can have absolute confidence in. That's what they haven't got now.
Is this a warming of your relationship with National? Are you getting closer to Mr Key?
Well, with the greatest respect, Mr Key is making up as he goes along, you know that. I mean, he can't remember a darn thing what to do with the GCSB. Mr Key,
So why support him in his bid to give them more powers?
Mr Key, as Mr Ferguson pointed out, took no interest in this issue, was negligent in the extreme. That's what he's actually saying. And so don't try and say that something like me...
Would you not be better then to push for an overhaul and as Labour is doing, a full inquiry into the GCSB, then backing National with this legislation?
I've got nothing against a full inquiry, but we can't wait around for a full inquiry that may come up with its findings in a year's time, when we've got a clear and present possible danger now. That's my point. OK.
Are you still, though, getting closer to National by doing this?
Well, I know, that the introduction of your program tried to turn this into some sort of coalition negotiations.
Well, it's interesting to know your position.
I want to show you, Rachel, the best way to know what New Zealand First is going to do is come to our meetings, hear what our policies are, tell the people and let them decide, because we make up our mind when the people have spoken, not beforehand.
Well, OK, I'll come. You tell me which way you're going to lean, though.
Well, I see. So we don't bother to wait till the public vote.
All right.
You're trying to presage and get a jump on democracy, and I'm afraid it doesn't work that way.
OK, let's speak hypothetically, because I know that politicians love speaking hypothetically. If you were negotiating to support a national government in the next election, would you make the buyback of Mighty River Power a condition of that?
Yes.
Categorically you would?
Categorically.
You will only support National if they agree to buy back Mighty River
Even
Power.
Treasury said it made economic sense not to do what the government's doing. Now, Treasury's not known for its North Korean views on economics, is it?
Which suggests you will end up being on the left, doesn't it? Because it's very unlikely that National is going to agree to that.
Look, with the greatest respect, you and I well know that there are politicians who will call over cut glass to get to power. I don't have to be one of them, and my record proves it, despite what you people say. I've given up office on matters of principle in the past a number of times, so I just know what they're prepared to do. They may say no now. You watch on election night what they'll say.
So that would be the condition. Buy back Mighty River Power and you would support them.
Many more conditions than that. We don't go into negotiations in a blind way. We go in knowing what our supporters want, why they voted for us, and intending to deliver to them. That's why we will walk in fully aware of what is the price of our support, and it may be that we don't go into government, are prepared to sit on the crossbenches and keep them honest. We're not making up our mind on that, but what we are saying is that if you see the slide in this country's economic and social performance this last 30 years, there are dramatic changes that are required, and we're happy to even stay on the crossbenches but insist that the government follow sound policies, which they haven't been doing for a long time.
OK, so basically the options are still open.
All options are open to us. We are not going to play our cards like some stupid card player before we've even seen them.
All right, Winston Peters, we have to leave it there.
Thank
you for your time.